social works, 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 yeah, S works, everyone put in their hands, you know it's a vibe, they're waiting in line to get up and flood up the stands, yeah, we in this together, we feel like fam, it's all about peace, so pull up with friends, you better come through with you and your crew, cause everybody going in, S works, so we keep it lit.
Workshops are a series of online workshops featuring the many incredibly talented friends of SocialWorks. This series aims to inspire and educate, bringing local and national creatives live to your smartphone. They will be sharing and teaching specific aspects of their craft. A wide variety of professions, interests, and hobbies are represented within our curriculum. Did we mention it's a fundraiser too? The stay-at-home notice has students wondering what's to come. For some, graduation and prom will both be canceled. This campaign will directly fundraise a celebration event for those students within the Chicagoland area. Once it's safe, of course. Tune in to any of our socials for one or all of the Sworkshops. You can find the full schedule of programming at socialworksshy.org or on our Instagram. Classes start Monday, April 13th. We'll see you there.
Hey everyone, it's Gary. I'm so excited to be here. I know it's not, the most beautiful weather outside, so I'm glad that you're here with me. Maybe we can learn a little bit while we're here. I'm excited to share a little bit about something that I really care a lot about, which is this thing called life design. I appreciate you for tuning in. Hopefully we can raise a little bit of money for the prom graduation event that's happening. I love what SocialWorks is up to, so it's an honor to be here. So the talk today is all about how to design and manage your own life. The promise that I have, so by the end of this 15, 20-minute talk, you're going to have a basic understanding of what this concept that I like to call life design is, and you're going to be on track to live a happier and more productive life. As far as agenda goes, we're going to talk about, well, first, who am I? You're probably wondering that. The second one is, what is life design and how does it relate to success? Third, we're going to talk about what influences in your life are under your control. And then fourth, we're going to talk about why and how you can and should control these influences on your life, because there's a lot of things that influence who you are and what you can accomplish. So it's so important to learn how to control these things. So first, who am I? Again, I'm Gary Sheng. What I do right now is I'm the Chief Operations Officer of Civics Unplugged, which I co-founded, which is a nonprofit that's based in New York, dedicated to training what we like to call civic superheroes to build the future of American democracy. Where I'm currently at is a place that is probably similar weather to where you're at right now. I'm in Aurora, Illinois, where I grew up, and I'm here for the quarantine. I spent 4 years at Google as a software engineering lead. So I led a small team, launched some pretty significant products. I also co-founded, and this is very different from Civics Unplugged and Google, I co-founded Dancing Pineapple, which is a music blog and music events company. And we produced 24 events in LA and New York over a 2-year time span between 2015 to 2017. We got several 100,000 listeners to our SoundCloud page, every week. The part about me that is really relevant is that I'm obsessed with life design and management, and hopefully I can teach you here a little something. So with that out of the way, let's talk life design. In other words, how you can find and take hold of the steering wheel of your life. the phrase life design is a really powerful one because it points to how you are the central creator of your life. It points to how if you choose to take responsibility for your life, you can shape the course of it. One of my favorite quotes about life design is, life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. And that shift in mentality from, I hope I find myself one day, like maybe if I get lucky, right, to let me take ownership over it. Let me be the author. Let me be the creator of my future. When I started to adopt that, I saw pretty remarkable results in terms of the pace of my development, as a human being and as a leader. So you might be wondering, what can you shape? Well, you can shape your ability to cultivate new positive qualities over time, believe it or not. You can shape your ability to cultivate personal strengths, which I like to call superpowers. You can shape your ability to actually get things done and do what you say you're going to do and accomplish your goals. And to a certain extent, you can shape your day-to-day happiness, both your more short-term mood and your general life satisfaction. A good way to think of what you're designing when you're designing your life is you're designing like a system, right? That is that can become more or less effective at achieving your goals, your visions, and your dreams, depending on how that system is configured. Taking responsibility for your life is critical to your ability to make an impact in the world. But a question you might be wondering is, does taking responsibility for your life imply that you can control for every part of your life? Well, let's think about it. To answer this question, it's helpful to first answer another question, which is, what has shaped and continues to shape who you are today and thus affects your future life outcomes? So how we break that down is, there's more than just these few things, but the things that influence who you are include the people in your life experiences, the content that you consume. Do you binge watch a lot of kind of junk food content, or do you read a lot of books? Do you watch documentaries? What type of activities do you participate in? Are you physically active? Are you competing in sports? Are you in your chess club or your debate team? Or are you doing things that might get you off track from your vision for yourself? And also your beliefs. Believe it or not, right? Just the things that you think really affect what you can accomplish. All right, so we're going to talk more in detail about 3 of these types of influences. So the people in your life it really matters who we surround ourselves with, because they have an enormous influence on what we value and what we see as possible. So a lot of you have heard of the phrase, you are the average of your 5 closest friends. And I firmly believe that's true, plus, right, everyone that is in your life, your parents, your teachers, even the people that you don't even know personally, but maybe you like listen to podcasts or watch YouTube videos of them. All of them have a really strong influence on who you are. And if for example, right, you're trying to start a business, right, and most of the people in your life don't think that you can do it, right, and are not very supportive, that actually affects whether you will succeed in starting the business. You may succeed anyways, but you'll be succeeding in spite of the naysayers, for example. And then in terms of beliefs, beliefs are so important to shaping who we are, because our beliefs inspire our thoughts, our behaviors, and ultimately our habits. And these are just so important to shaping who we are. And the media and content that we consume really matters because we acquire the values and norms appropriate or necessary in the cultures and worldviews we are exposed to. via the people we interact with and the media we consume. So if a certain type of, a common, if the way that a particular type of media portrays, how a man should treat a woman, for example, is a certain way, you'll be influenced in how you treat women as a man, for example. So far we've established that there's a lot of types of influences that shape who we are today, but you're probably still wondering, what influences that shape us do we have control over? Do we have control over everything that shapes who we are? And yeah, thank you, Gardenia Roses, for the shout outs. Happy to be here. And Hits One Music LA, thank you as well. So, do we have control over everything that shapes who we are? The answer is no, and we should be okay with that. And the caveat is that we have more control over the variables that affect our lives than any of you probably imagine. At least, I can say that even as a 27-year-old, just the amount of realization of how much is in my control just over the past year from 26 to 27 has been tremendous, right? So, especially if you're in your teens right now, just know that you have just so much room to kind of grow as a person. Like, the sky's the limit. So what's also important to note is that as you grow older and become more independent, you increasingly have more responsibility, power and responsibility to design your life. Understandably, like, you're under certain constraints of, what if you disagree with what type of food your parents might be cooking, right? You have a lot less wiggle room of what you're going to actually eat. So that's, obviously, the older that you get, usually you have more agency over your life. And this makes sense. Well, I guess I just said it. Your parents and guardians have raised you most likely in the best way they know, and as a result, so much of what you believe, what you have been exposed to, what rules you follow have been determined, and in many cases have been required by them, right? So if I remember one of my neighbors, his grandpa genuinely thought ketchup was sorry to offend you if you think this as well. Genuinely thought that ketchup was a good replacement for vegetables, and it's hard to kind of push back on your grandpa if they believe a certain thing like that. And the other reason this makes sense is because as you learn the skills of habit building and life design, you will discover new parts of your life to shift, optimize, and become an agent of. It'll just happen, right? So I'm not going to cover all the things that you're going to realize. Wait, I actually had control over that, and I thought I was just like, I was a victim to circumstance. You're not. That's just not, the case. All right, cool. So if we aren't in control of everything, what is in our power? First, what's not in your control? What essentially has already been decided for you? Here's what we think is not in your control. Who your parents are, obviously. Where you live. Your compulsory education. Yeah, you can sort of skip class, right? But like, there's consequences of that, unfortunately, even if the schooling is not, super satisfying. You can't really change what happened in the past. You can change how you think about it, but you can't change what happened in the past. It's practically speaking, you can't control how others perceive you. And as much as we would like to make a certain outcome certain, like, I do this, then this happens, even if you put in the best possible effort, right, and you covered all your bases, you can still fail, and that's okay. All right, so now, what is in your control? What is in your power? So something to keep in mind is for a number of reasons, each of you may have different levels of ability to control the things I'm about to list. But no matter your situation, pay attention to the whole list so you can reflect on, what levers you can pull to change your life. If not now, then at least at some point, in the future. All right. So what is in your control? Here's a partial list. So what you do with your time, your media consumption, your food consumption, your bedroom. And I'm actually calling this out in particular because, ideally it's like the safe space, right? That you customize and you, even if there's a lot of chaos in the world, you can come back to that. What and how you think, who you spend time with, your material goods consumption. Believe it or not, and I genuinely believe this, your personality and what and how you feel. And you also might be wondering, why is it important that you exercise control over these influences? So what, right? You have the ability to shift these things. Why is it important? And also, how might you exercise control over these influences? And then finally, what does better even look like? In other words, what are the outcomes you can achieve if you exercise control over these influences? And I see some questions coming in. We're gonna have a Q&A at the end, so if I don't get to it, right now, we'll make sure to get to it later. All right, so we're not gonna go over the whys and hows for all of the things we said were in your control, but we're gonna go over 3. So the first one we're gonna go over is who you spend time with, right? Why this matters, and is that you consciously and subconsciously learn the characteristics, ways, thinking, interests, values, and more of the people you spend time with. And how you can change this before changing your social circles kind of abruptly. You first want to map out who all is in the circles that you spend time in. You want to map out how they influence who you are. Are they aligned in values, goals, or interests? And does their presence in your life energize you or drain you? Once you've mapped out who all is in your life and how they affect your well-being and future, it's a lot easier to make adjustments to your social life. And so I think this slide sort of answers the question, can people really be toxic to your life? Yes, and you should do something about it. Absolutely. It's not like, I think it can be very tempting, for example, to keep friends around because of this notion of loyalty or something, or like we've been friends for 10 years. Like how can you say that I'm a bad influence on you, or we should spend less time together? It's very, like, the challenge with life design. It's often you're forced to weigh the pros and cons of elevating certain values over another, right? So loyalty could be a value of yours, right? But also just like your own health could be a value, right? And so at any time, right, you have to think really clearly, okay, it can be weird to think of friends in a cost-benefit analysis, but that's absolutely what you have to do. But again, don't do anything rash, right? Make sure you really think deeply about what the situation is. If you can rectify it without like cutting people out, it's really important to be really thoughtful with relationships. And so what better looks like is everyone you consciously spend time with is a person who energizes you and helps you grow, even if they are not fully aligned in terms of goals, values, or interests. And this may seem so far away from like what you're experiencing now that it can be like kind of daunting. But again, like just start with just awareness of what your social situation is, and as long as it's getting better over time, right? I think you should be proud of that. All right, another one let's talk about is your media consumption. So this is really easy to overlook because I think part of it is because people may think that they are who they are, right? And whatever media they consume is just kind of, it's entertainment, right? It's entertainment, right? I am who I am. This is not going to affect me. But in many ways, you are the media you eat. The quality of your thoughts and decision making depends on the quality of the information you feed the mind. If you consume content that gives you a distorted view of reality, you will almost certainly make irresponsible decisions. So how you can change this is, well, first I want to say, how do you even know that your media consumption might need a change? Well, first you have to just actually catalog what your, first you have to get a grasp on or establish for the first time ever maybe what your goals in consuming media are. So it could be partially to be just entertained, right? But is that all that you're trying to use media for, right? Are you also trying to learn things and perhaps get a better handle on the truth? Are you also trying to expand the mind? Are you trying to stay on top of current events? Are you trying to understand human nature? Are you trying to learn how to emulate great communicators? So once you figure out your goals, you can start asking yourself if your media diet is allowing you to achieve those goals. And if there's, if you have more questions about this, you can feel free. I'm putting my Twitter at the end of this as well. So what better looks like is what a better media diet looks like depends on your goals for consuming media in the first place. You're gonna kind of hear multiple times here, I strongly advocate for reflection and just taking a step back and being like, what are my goals? And also, what is my situation? Self-awareness is so important to being able to go on an upward trajectory. All right, and the final thing that we're going to talk about is how you can control what you do with your time. And so why this matters is because, and I think it's really easy for teenagers. I know I certainly felt this way. You can be like, oh, I have a lifetime to figure this out. But time flies, right? Honestly, I thought it was January yesterday. You have limited time in a day, you have limited time in a week, month, right? The years honestly go by pretty quickly. So you probably have so much you want to do in that time that you may not be getting done right now. So good time management helps you make time for skill building and make steady progress toward your goals. So you're probably going to see a pattern here. So how you can change this is, first, you take stock of where you spend your time. And for those of you that have never kept a calendar, well, I don't know. I don't even know if you want to see my calendar, but every hour, often every half hour, is broken down and often in advance on Sunday. So on Sunday, I actually block off an hour or two to literally plan out, and I change it. I throughout the week, I change it. I do kind of a Tetris block sort of thing. But just the fact that at every half hour or hour, there's not really a question of what I'm supposed to be doing. That I don't know if any of you have heard of the word switching cost, or okay, so the cost of just what do I do next? For people that don't keep a calendar, that adds up so much, right? Because if you're spending 5 to 10 minutes just trying to figure out what to do every next hour, right? That's hours every day that you're just I don't know what I'm supposed to do. That's kind of an aside, but so again, how you can change what you do with your time is you first take stock of where you spend your time, and then looking at what you want to accomplish and who you want to be and what process goals are needed to achieve that vision for the future. And then you decide whether you need to cut out or phase out activities that are not relevant to your happiness or future vision, and make it a point to achieve your daily and weekly process goals. So let me make this less abstract. In college, my freshman year, I was, slightly ashamed to say that I was addicted to this video game that was kind of the predecessor to League of Legends. And but I had this goal of getting internships. I had this goal of getting good grades, and the habit of playing video games late into the night was directly cutting into my ability to achieve the vision for myself, right? But it took me actually a lot of reflection, and I wasn't that good at reflecting when I was a freshman year of college, but it took me that reflection of, okay, who do I want to be, and what is getting in my way, right? And also you have to think about what is the downside of cutting that bad habit out of your life. Gaming just in general is not bad for you, in like healthy doses, but you're always weighing relative goods, right? Because if it's getting in the way of, you need to read this book, right, to gain this knowledge to get this job, the choice should be a lot simpler. And so what better looks like is the specifics are up to you to decide based on where you want to go and who you want to be. But there are certain activities that are necessities for all people. So for example, sleep. Man, I could not recommend that more. So while there's a tiny minority of people that can function on fewer than 7 or 8 hours of sleep, don't assume that it's you. Like I tried to be like that. I tried to be like the hustle hard. Like I don't need sleep. Like I'm special. That sleep deficit adds up, and there's all these different scientific studies that show that like it helps with weight management. It allows you to be a lot more productive throughout the day. So even if like I'm like, oh, okay, let me sleep one last hour to get one more hour of work done, it actually is counterproductive. It actually like harms my ability to achieve my goals of being productive, if that makes sense. So if there's anything that you prioritize in your day, it's sleep. And I know it's like really hard to even get on a good sleep schedule in this like kind of Groundhog Day environment that we're in. Every day kind of feels like the same. The weekends don't even seem to exist. But getting on a good sleep schedule is so important. So maybe actually do one more. So your bedroom. So why is it important to kind of control your just to manage it, to make your bedroom your own? So our mind cannot live independently from our environment. Thus, keeping the bedroom tidy, clean, and organized has an impact on our mood when we get up, on the way we start the day, and our ability to face issues head on. So a clean room with a made bed and pile-free floors will not only turn your bedroom into a clean, like a safe haven, clean haven for yourself, it can change how the rest of your day goes. And I wouldn't recommend any advice that I haven't taken myself. Sometimes, I forget to make my bed, but just generally speaking, like I've really internalized the idea that we are not separate from the outside world, right? The posters that we have on the wall, like, and I'll just give you an example. I don't have posters here, right? But in my apartment in New York, I have Muhammad Ali, I have Marvin Gaye, I have MLK, I have Princess Diana, I have Jimi Hendrix. I have all these people that I really look up to. So I get the vibe, right? I'm inspired when I wake up. I'm inspired when I go to sleep. And I also just try to keep everything tidy so that, it reflects in just how I do everything. And thus it affects how successful I ultimately can be. Okay, cool. So by now, I think you get the point. There's a lot that affects you, who you are, and what you can do with your life. And there's a lot that you can do about these influences. And if this seems like a lot, don't worry, because there's no rush to figure this all out at once. And just know that just by recognizing how much is under your control, you are way ahead of the game. And also, if you want a copy of this deck, because there's like a good amount of information here that you might want to reference in the future if this is helpful, you can just DM me on Twitter. I'll give you that in a second. So let's go over some questions. So first, let's talk about how did you develop this philosophy? It's a great question. I think I'll say I'm a very practical person. I don't like debating philosophy in the sense that in practice what a lot of academics do are just kind of debating what people from the 1800s said, and they're like what did this passage mean? What did this German passage mean? Like that's not really interesting to me. The reason why I started to get very systematic about how I manage my life is because out of like my ambition, right, for who I think I could be. And when I guess at some point, right, either in high school or college, I realized I don't even know what the limits of human potential is, right? So let me just assume that I can be a lot better than I am today. And then every next day, there's potential for me to get better and better. And as long as I control the things that are in my control, I think it's a pretty simple philosophy. It's like control the things you can control to the best of your ability. Don't have to be perfect, but just constantly learn about how your body is reacting, how your mind, how your outcomes are being affected by your lifestyle decisions. Kind of treat yourself like kind of like a science experiment. That's the only way that you know if you are if the way that you're kind of tweaking your life design is going positively. Hope that answers your question. Gardenia Roses. I feel like the universe is trying to tell me something. I mean, if this is helpful to you, I'm so happy. Does mental health impact this? I feel like I can't do anything with my life. So that's a big question. Yes, and so I'm not a mental health expert by any means. I will say that I suffered from what I would imagine is kind of chronic depression when I was. I like to say from the age of like 7 to 18, I probably suffered from chronic depression, and I think the thing that helped me get over a lot of that was appreciating the bits of progress that I am making. So even if it's small, right? So I wouldn't compare yourself to anyone else except yourself, right? So after you've assessed, okay, where am I today? And maybe like one of the things that you're trying to do is get yourself in shape, get yourself in cardiovascular shape. Or maybe you run a 10-minute mile, right? If next week you run a 9-minute 45 mile, right, you should feel super proud of yourself, honestly. So I guess this is far from a silver bullet, right? And again, I'm not a mental health expert, but one thing that you can do is try to apply some of the lessons here of just really becoming aware of where you're at and appreciating the little incremental steps that you're taking to become a slightly more kind of awesome person than you already are. Do you believe in fate? I'm not. Okay, I'll put this up. Do you believe in fate? I think a related question to that, which is under this, is what do you think about manifesting things and events into existence? I think that if you don't think that something is going to happen, if you're like, if you're going to be in a swimming competition, right, and you think you're going to lose, you're probably going to lose. And if and I would say that if any time when I've been able to pull off something that Gary from a year ago or 2 years ago would have been thought was crazy to pull off, the reason why I pulled it off was because I had this like crazy belief that I could pull it off, right? And what that crazy belief, it's kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy. If you really believe that it's possible for you to pull this off, then you're going to take really seriously doing everything that you can to set yourself up for that success. So I'll just say it right here. Like I hope that we are in a much better place politically, as a kind of national community, as a global community. I hope to play a role in that. I hope to be in the White House in the next not this presidency, but the next presidency. I want to be in the White House in January 2025. Uh, if or when that happens, am I manifesting it? Is it fate? I don't know, but I just know that I want to do a lot of good in this world. I know that it'll take a lot of hard work on my part and like applying my own philosophy that I lay out here and getting better and better, getting smarter every day, making more connections every day. And I guess a related thing I'll say is that no one else is going to believe in yourself until you believe in yourself first, because everyone is self-doubting, right? Everyone is like looking for reasons to believe, oh, there's no way that's going to happen. So it starts within, and I think every subsequent day, I feel less crazy about my hopes for myself and for the country's future. So I'm just going to acknowledge this question. It's a great question. Ugly Deli Meat. That's an awesome name. Thank you for tuning in. Can you explain what you mean by switching costs? Yes. So let's say that you have you have like let's say you don't keep a calendar like me and like maniacally like block out every hour. Let's say you just have a typical to-do list, right? Let's say I have 3 things on my to-do list. I'm doing the first thing on my to-do list now, but because I haven't blocked off the rest of my day, or I don't know when I'm going to do the next 2 things, right? There's like the switching cost of like, what am I going to do next, right? It's like after I finish task 1, what do I do next? And I don't know if everyone uses the term switching cost, but just know that I mean that. Like my point in saying that was, if you don't plan ahead, like if you don't plan your time out ahead of time, you run the risk of wasting a lot of time, ironically, trying to figure out what to do in the moment. And it's like, and at that moment, you're like kind of just dazed. You're like kind of dazed from the last thing that you were in. Maybe you were in like a Zoom call and it was like tiring, and you're like, you're not in the mood to figure out what to do. And then you just start, like I used to, I just like scroll on Instagram for forever. You don't even know what time it is. And then, so there's a lot of benefits of just being really deliberate about where you spend your time. Why is it harder to reflect and improve when you are younger? So it's harder to reflect and improve when you're younger because, well, it's harder to improve when you're younger because it's harder to reflect when you're younger. Maybe it's not. I don't want to. Harder is not the right word. It's not a bad word. Look, I don't think that we teach self-awareness. I don't think a lot of adults are self-aware, first of all. So it's not like the real world teaches you self-awareness, right, as a guarantee. I think there's so many like adults that just have no self-awareness. Right? So let's just get that out of the way, and don't reflect. I think that kids, before they're taught like trigonometry and like cosine tangent, I don't remember any of that. I've never used that in my life. And that's not to bash anyone that cares about that, right? Like 99.99% of people never use trigonometry, but they damn should care about reflecting on, was today a good day? Was this month a good month? Like, how do I want to get better? I don't think it's a matter of like capability, right? I work with teenagers as a living, right, for Civics Unplugged. they're brilliant. And every day, actually, we have like a kind of a rich community ritual where I pose like a reflection question, but like, what am I doing there? I'm like kind of actively kind of encouraging them to reflect, and they're very good at it when they're just given a little bit of encouragement. But does the K through 12 system, does Chicago public schools, have that in the curriculum? No, but they probably should. Kyle Hill, no, thank you for tuning in. I'm glad it's helpful. Why do you think your chronic depression went undiagnosed when you were younger? How can Gen Z folks help get diagnosed? Um, it's a big question. I would say one part of it is the fact that I'm Chinese American. My, you know, I think there's probably like a big pride thing in Asian cultures of having like being really mentally tough, like we can handle poverty, like it's like an embarrassment if like your kid is mentally weak, right? And I think I'm glad that we now know that it's like not about weakness or whatever. It's like this is just stuff that lots of people go through, and the more that we ignore it, the more like lives are going to suffer, and also potential is being wasted. Um, I will say something like you may not expect me to go here. I'm grateful for the darkness that I felt when I was growing up, because I think I have a lot more perspective. I think I have a lot more empathy for people that are going through that now, and I think that it's really widespread now, especially with there's a lot of job loss, there's a lot of lives lost right now. So if you think about what type of leaders that you want to be leading, you probably want empathetic leaders. And I think that if you have too much privilege when you're growing up, it's really hard to fake whether you get what people are going through. So how can Gen Z folks help get diagnosed? I think what Social Works is doing with My State of Mind is pretty awesome. I think it's just so necessary, and I think that there's also, and I'm not an expert in all of this, but I think there's technology to like talk to people when you need help that is like emerging. That I'm sure that there's a lot of good stuff out there right now. What does Civics Unplugged do? So what Civics Unplugged does is, well, the mission is to empower Gen Z to, it's a very ambitious goal to build the future of American democracy. And so let me take a step back and say, okay, why is that even our mission? Because I'm sure a lot of you have heard people complain about, how Chicago politics works. Right? I'm not an expert in that, but I think widespread across the country, how our actual political systems, how our government functions, how our electoral systems work, we're actually pretty far behind a lot of other countries that didn't have democracy until recently, like Taiwan, like Estonia, like Norway. Like even though we were one of the earliest democracies, our democracy is not serving the people. Your votes don't count as much as they should. Your votes count, but they don't count as much as they should. Certainly not in kind of underserved areas where there's, especially in places like Georgia, there's a lot of voter suppression. So, without getting into too much detail, what I'm trying to do is train the future leaders, that what we call civic superheroes, to do things like spearhead campaigns that reform democracy, right? So, for example, I would like to see more people step in the shoes of one of my good friends, Katie Fahey, who successfully led, when she was like in her mid-20s, she successfully led an effort to overturn gerrymandering in Michigan, partisan gerrymandering in Michigan. How she did that was she mobilized thousands of volunteers to knock on hundreds of thousands of doors and get hundreds of thousands of signatures. right? And no one expects you to do this, and it's like it's kind of screwed up that it's so hard to get democracy on the ballot, right? But I really believe in Gen Z, and I've just been really impressed by the kids that I'm working with. So again, what we do is we train these kids, and currently there's a program that I'm running to do just that. Hits one, Music LA. Totally agree. If you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. Absolutely. I think very rarely do just like magically becomes well. I almost want to say like this never happens, right? Unless you're like you literally win the lottery. But is that like it's not really self-won success? You know, oftentimes like when someone is like also when someone is like a one-hit wonder, they have or they made their break, right? It's not like that they got lucky. They may have spent 20 years trying to make that one-hit wonder, right? Or that their big break. So it's all about preparation. Question from an anonymous: When do you plan out your days? So on Sundays in like the afternoons, usually like 3 p.m., I'll block off like an hour and a half of just doing two things: reflecting on the past week of did I accomplish the goals that I wanted to accomplish? What were some highlights? What could have gone better? What will I do more of? And then, so it's like backwards, and then the other half is forwards. So like, what do I want to do on Monday? What do I do on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? And the way that I figure out what to put on my calendar is based on my goals that tend to be kind of longer term. Like, so let me just, this is like a very quick crash course, but like, how do you know what to do? How do you know what your 2-year goals are if you don't know what your 5-year goals are or 10-year goals are? Right? How do you know what to do over the next quarter if you don't know what to do, if you don't know where you want to be in a year, right? So my advice is like to not just think about the next week if you're just starting to think about like life design and like, crushing your goals, blah, blah, blah. Like what I would think about is where do you want to be in 10 years? If not, like, if not even so further to the extreme, thinking about what do you want people to say at your funeral? This is actually, it's not like a tip that I came up with. I wish I did, right? But a really genius exercise actually is writing your obituary. So like I have an obituary. Gary Sheng died at the age of I forget what age I put. Did I put over 100 or not? I don't remember. Well, like let's say Gary Sheng died at the age of 98. He had he had a loving wife and 4 kids and 12 grandkids, 30 great grandkids, blah blah blah, and like he made a huge impact on American politics. He addressed corruption. Like it's kind of like it's kind of fun. Well, one, it's fun. It may sound scary and ridiculous to be like, am I really going to have the impact? But this kind of goes back to that one great question about fate and also manifesting. You're definitely not going to be in the White House, for example, if you never thought about being in the White House, right? Unless you're, I don't know, unless you're like Jared Kushner and you just kind of end up there. But I think it's really important to think really big about who you want to be, right? And then make sure that the way that you're thinking about on the year time scale to the quarter time scale to the month time scale to the week to the day to the hour lines up, right? Builds up to that, right? And obviously your plans can change. What you want to be can change. So just recognize that this is all fluid, but at any given moment, you should have an idea of who you want to be in the future. Thank you, Britt, for saying that. Hits One Music LA. Thanks again. Uh, it was really fun to do this. What's your background in political science? What career in civics are you pursuing? So my background in political science is actually besides like I took one class in college and I thought it was like a fun. It was supposed to be like a you know um, let's try this out. I already have all my credits for computer science. So my major at Duke, I went to Duke, Go Zion, was computer science, and um, after I got all my credits for that major, like my second semester senior year, I decided to take my first political science class, and it was about inequality in America. And my mind was blown because I think probably grew up in a privileged background, and I just didn't know, right, that like a few people in the world owned more wealth than like the bottom 50%, and that's pretty terrible. Um, but even then, I didn't really look that much more into civics and political science until honestly Trump got elected, and I realized I didn't know much about how the world worked. Honestly, I was like taken aback. At that point, I was just at Google. My entire goals were kind of just to get promoted at Google, and um, and also go to good parties and host good parties, which is it's fun, but I started to really look into deeper questions about how the world works, and I was disappointed about how broken our systems are. And that kind of just led to what is now turned into a multi-thousand-hour learning journey of meeting all types of people and reading all these books, I listen to like 30 hours of podcasts a week. I'm kind of crazy like that. I listen to a multiple times speed. I watch a lot of, I used to watch a lot of documentaries. I used to read a lot of books. I try to read from my Kindle whenever I can. Um, but I have no degree. But I could not believe more in the power of self-directed learning. So if you're interested in anything, don't wait for a college professor to tell you that you can learn something. It's kind of a golden age for people that are actually curious. Um, Great question. Are there ways young people can get involved with civics locally? Yes, absolutely. Um, so there's uh, the reason why I like to use the word civics versus politics is because when people think of politics, they think of division, kind of attacks. They think of um, really nasty electoral campaigns. And yes, you can get civically involved by volunteering for or joining like a political campaign for your local like alderman or whatever. But you can also be civically engaged by volunteering for a nonprofit or maybe starting your own if you think that no nonprofit is addressing the issue that you want to see addressed. I think that Chicago, I don't know what's happening right now with the quarantine, but I think um, there's youth like advisory boards for different city councils. I think for Chicago, um, but what um, I think every city is a little bit different, and what I would advise is ask people that are really involved in civics and politics in your local city for advice on what opportunities there are. Yeah, so top podcast recommendations. Um, Let me think. Yep. Um, so I think one is the Knowledge Project. You can Google this, but the Knowledge Project is really good. Um, Talks all about like productivity, thinking better, and all that. And then I'll just give you one more, which is if you're interested in civics and politics, the Ezra Klein Show. There's a lot more than this, but the Ezra Klein Show is very good. He's very thoughtful and curious and all that. And then favorite books, podcasts. Just at the interest of time, I'm gonna just skip that one. What's your IG account? At Gary Sheng. My first name, last name. Chicago Votes is currently hiring for their Democracy Corps. That sounds awesome. You should check that out. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up. If you have any more questions, feel free to follow me on Twitter and DM me. Actually, I disabled my Instagram, ironically, because I was scrolling too much. You can find me on Twitter. Please DM me. I would also say we are doing like a virtual summer camp for high schoolers. So if you want to apply to that, go to cusummercamp.com to learn more and apply. And I think that the link to donate, finally, last but not least, to donate to the prom, the Social Works Prom Fund is on the screen. So make sure to donate to that. I'm excited to see what comes of it. And I'm just really grateful for the social works community. They're a great partner to Civics Unplugged. And it's all about letting the kids lead, empowering them to lead. They're already leaders. Let's build a brighter future because the older people clearly don't have it handled. So with that, peace.
You can feel how we live through. It's all about the youth. Change the world through the tunes. Make the world to a better place. Ain't S works what we do. Social works. Social works. Social works. Social. Social works. Social works. Social works.
Social works. Keep my family out the dirt. This organization we stopping no Satan and open, but we call it Sworks. Action on Taylor the killer verse. I do on my family, my city hurt. They killing our babies, this war going crazy. I pray for my city to reimburse. Running schools for the kiddies. We the city and we litty. All I know is it's work. With the heart, keep it busy. Know the life keep it tricky, but please just let me finish. Let me just be a witness. S works handle business.
Social works. Social works. Social works. Social. Social works. Social works. Social works.
Ready or not, here we come. South side, west side, east side, north side. Up on the run, we ain't for the none. We came in the party, we here for the fun. Celebrate life, the party we young. Sky's the limit, we looking above. We up in the sun, no matter what, we stay on the run. Ha, S work, do your thing. S work, keep it lit. Bullseye, keep your aim. Yeah, we up on the jib. North side, that's the way. Ready or not, here we come. S work, keep the energy. Look, yeah, we never unplug. S work, show some love.
Social works. Social works. Social